Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Alsruhe, and welcome to Barbells and Bushcraft, where typically when you hear me say those words, I'm doing something that looks a lot more like building a log cabin. However, currently, the log cabin is under about half a foot of ice and snow and has been for the better part of a month. So that's why you guys have not seen any cabin updates as of late. We are definitely having a little bit different of a winter this year in Maryland, because for us, we are just getting a ton of snow, and the area where the cabin is being built is very heavily wooded, so it doesn't really get much sunlight. So the very first snow that we got here in Maryland is still sitting here, and it is not going anywhere. In fact, today is another snow day where we're supposed to get 5 to 7 inches, which means that I am trapped inside, and when I am trapped inside, I need to do something. And once all my normal chores are done, I still need to do something. And since I don't have TV or internet, I gotta do something creative. So I thought I'd spend a couple hours doing some wood carving today, and I just wanted to go over some basic how-to to show you guys how maybe if you guys are stuck inside, I know a lot of you are this time of year, especially right now, maybe you guys can try some of these out as just a small project that will take up some of your time. So what I chose to tackle today is just a basic spiral. Now, this can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes and just different forms, but the basic idea is always the same. Once you get the principle down, you can do it with whatever you want. Now, as always, I try to keep things as basic as possible, so I'm going to show you how to do this in very little steps and with as little specialty equipment as you're possibly going to need. Okay, so obviously the first thing you're going to need to tackle this project is something to carve with. Now, this is a really nice wood carving knife by Deepwood Ventures, and I can't recommend this company enough. I absolutely love their blades. However, you don't need anything like this whatsoever. I do the entire project except the very first scoring cuts with an X-Acto knife, which you can pick up anywhere from Walmart to any hobby shop to any hardware store. You can find these absolutely anywhere. I would recommend picking up a couple extra blades. It costs next to nothing, and for a small project like this, it works perfectly because your blade needs to match the project, right? So I wouldn't use my big Bushcraft knife if I was going to try to carve something very intricate on something small like this. That doesn't really make sense. Your blade needs to match the project, and this project is going to be extremely small, so that's why I use an X-Acto knife for almost the entire thing. So once you have your whole knife thing figured out, then you need something to actually carve. And guys, you do not need any type of specialty wood. You can carve absolutely any wood that you want to. However, I will say that some are going to be easier than others because some are hardwood, some are softwood, some are prone to knots, some have crazy grains. So if you are going to choose something, you want something with as straight of grain as possible, preferably a softer wood. What I'm actually using here is basswood, which you can pick up anywhere online, or again, any type of hobby shop or anywhere where you can find some arts and crafts type of stuff. Go to where they have any woodworking things, wood burning, wood carving, and you'll find this stuff. It's kind of the preferred beginner wood carving stuff because again, there's not a lot of knots. It's very straight grained and it's a pretty soft wood. Tends not to really chip off really badly. So basswood's a great thing to learn on, and basically that's what I do 99% of my carvings with. Now, for today's project, I'm actually out of the blanks that I use for it, but this is today's project. I've already carved it just to make sure I didn't screw it up. However, what we're looking at here is just a 1 inch by 1 inch by 2 inch little block. This I think is a 6 inch, but same exact thing. Yeah. Other items that you're going to need are a pencil and maybe a ruler. You don't even really need the ruler. You just need a straight edge maybe. That's kind of optional. This is just for the layout. And then this is actually just a hard bristled brush. You can use an old toothbrush. You can pretty much use any type of brush that you would like. This is just to help clean out some of the little piece of wood and some of the sawdust away from the project that you're going to be working on. And then the final item that you will see me using today is just a simple carving gouge. However, I don't use this the way that it's supposed to be used. All that I'm using this for is to clear little pieces of debris wood. So basically you could use a butter knife, you could use a nail, you could use virtually anything that is hard and pointy, but preferably the smaller point that you can get to get into the little intricate spots, the better. As far as what we want the finished project to look like, this is what we are looking for. So this is a very basic spiral and is really not that hard to do if you have a reasonable amount of patience. However, since it's kind of hollow and that's not something that looks very easy to do, it really gives the impression that you have some clue of what you are doing. Now this one has been finished with some hemp twine and it's been stained and everything has been done to it. This one is actually one that I did right before recording this intro, and I'm going to show you guys step by step, time lapse, exactly how this got done, and then how you guys choose to finish it or whatever you want to do is completely up to you. Now for me today, going from an empty block to this took me about 2 hours and 20 minutes. However, I have done many of these, so it might take you a lot longer. All that I will say is when it comes to wood carving, take your time and be patient, especially at the beginning. Guys, if it breaks, grab some super glue, put it back together, and continue on. You're going to break it. Bad things are going to happen. Something else that you guys might need is sandpaper, because sandpaper can cover a multitude of sins. So yeah, without further ado, guys, I'm going to go into the voiceover and show you guys exactly how this is done. All right, guys, so here we are with nothing more than a blank basswood block that you can pick up just about anywhere with any sort of beginner wood carving kit. Now the dimensions are supposed to be 1 inch by 1 inch by 2 inches, and it's not quite that, but that's not that big of a deal. You still need to lay it off, and the first marks you're going to put down are going to represent your crown and your base. They can be whatever you want, but once you have them, find the center of the block, and all you're going to do is draw 2 more lines that are going to split the difference between your crown line and your base line. Now, it's up to you how exact you want to be here, but when you're doing something like a geometrical shape like we're doing, you want the thing to be pretty accurate. If you would like to eyeball, you can absolutely feel free to do that, but when you are doing a repeating type of shape, the more accurate your layout is, typically the better product that you're going to end up with. Anyway, once you do have your marks, go ahead and use something to have a straight edge all the way across. And again, guys, you do not need to use straight edge if you don't want to, but it will probably end up with a better product. Once you have laid it off on one side though, make sure you do all 4 sides. Now for the real lines. You're going to take from one corner of that rectangle to the other, and you're just going to draw a diagonal line all the way through, and make sure that these lines are kind of dark because these are your real lines that you're going to be following throughout the rest of the carving. Once you have it on one side, do it on all 4. Just make sure that your lines are chasing each other. Do not have anything weird and intersecting. That's not going to work. It's also probably a really good time to mention that you should be wearing some sort of hand protection, unlike me. Now, something as simple as a leather glove can work. They actually make like wood carving gloves and things like that. Unfortunately, I have learned how to carve by getting blood all over the pieces that I'm working on. I would encourage you to use some sort of protection so that you can stay out of that situation. But as you guys can see, I'm just taking it very slow and methodical, and I'm really taking my time, trying to be as careful as possible. Now, what you're actually seeing me do here is just kind of round out the corners. So what I'm doing at the crown and the base is making a stop cut by pushing pressure down just like you're seeing, and then I'm going to remove the material between those 2 lines that I made. Now stop cuts, the purpose of them is so that when I am removing this material, I don't rocket the rest of the end of that column off, right? A stop cut is one of the first things you're going to learn in wood carving, and it's going to save you a ton of time and headache. Anyway, take your time on this, guys, but once you do have one side done, go ahead and use stop cuts and then just carefully remove the material. It doesn't need to be super round, but you're just trying to kind of take those corners off because it's going to make the geometry a little bit easier to follow as you're chasing those lines. But once you have knocked off those corners, I would encourage that you just take a pencil and really quickly just redraw those lines. Make sure everything is staying lined up and that you know where it's going, because it seems simple, but guys, after you stare at the same piece for a long time, your eyes can go a little crazy. You can mess things up. So the more guidelines that you have to start out with, especially when you're a beginner, the better. I am still completely beginner, and that's why you see me doing all these things so carefully. Now, once you do have the corners removed and you have those lines kind of drawn in, what you're basically going to do is do another stop cut, or basically score a line, and then you're going to just kind of remove material in kind of a V notch or a V cut. So I'm making the one line down the middle, and then I'm literally just going at like a 45-degree angle, cutting to that line, and then coming from the other side at a 45-degree angle and cutting to the line. And it just removes a very small amount of material. Now, of course, the harder you press and the more pressure that you use, you can remove more material faster. However, with something this small and intricate, especially if you're a beginner, I would really take your time. Because guys, you cannot replace material. With wood carving, if you take something away, you can't get it back, right? So you really need to think that old adage of measuring twice and cutting once, that's just what you're doing for the entire time. Anyway, all you're doing basically are these V cuts, just back and forth, time and time again, trying to make these kind of ravines just deeper and deeper. Now, if you've done it, you'll actually start to see that you kind of have some shallow kind of grooves all the way around it. And here's where the beauty and the terribleness of the spiral begins. All that you need to do to make this thing hollow is continue doing what you have been doing for a very long time. It's just like lifting weights. It's going to take a lot longer than you think, and you're going to need more patience than you wish you had. But eventually you will see daylight. So all that you're seeing right here, since it is the face or the back of kind of this piece, I'm really trying to take my time and just remove very small pieces of material. The more neat that you can be here at the very beginning, the better, because it's just going to get more sloppy as you go along, and you're going to make mistakes as you go. But just using in between, kind of scoring it and just barely removing material, and then again using kind of those V cuts or those V notches, just going and going and going, continually trying to make it deeper and deeper. And this is where the patience and the mindful meditation comes in, because guys, I'm not kidding, you will be doing this for an hour, hour and a half before you really get to some place where you feel like you're making some sort of progress. Once you get through one little line, go back up, find whichever one is the most shallow, and start there and start digging into that. Also right here, you can see where I'm using kind of this toothbrush, for lack of a better term. This is how I'm getting some of those smaller pieces that are still kind of clinging on. I just use a hard kind of bristled brush and just brush in those grooves as they go, and hopefully they'll just kind of start kicking out, which will make the carving a good bit easier. Guys, just like I mentioned earlier, there's absolutely nothing that is really that technically hard about this carving. I think the hardest part about it, honestly, is to just keep your mindfulness in it long enough that you don't try to rush and you don't try to remove too much material too fast and make some kind of big mistake that's going to end up screwing it up. Because honestly, what you're doing right now, if you just continue doing it, you will end up with an awesome product. It's just about having the patience to stick with it and continually do the same thing over and over again. But after a little bit, you will start to see more progress. Those lines will get deeper and deeper and deeper. However, that also makes it harder to reach inside those crevices. So at this point, oftentimes, what I need to start doing is carving the inside line. So as you can see, I'm starting to make a little curve there. And if you can envision the piece as a 3D piece instead of just looking at it like this, that inside part, that inside core, just like an apple core, is going to have to disappear. So you need to carve kind of the structure of the core out that you're going to be removing, and then it's just going to need to have to happen in very small segments time and time again. But what you're seeing there, reaching with that knife, is actually trying to carve that inside curve. Again, you're working in a 360-degree kind of thing here, so you can't think of it as just like something that you're carving on the face of a piece of wood. You need to think about the back sides, the insides, the absolute everything, and that's what I'm trying to do. Also right here, you can see that tool. That is actually, if you carve for any amount of time, you'll end up getting a couple of gouges, and that is nothing more than one of those, and I'm just using the tip of it to kind of dig out some of that even harder wood that like the brush couldn't get out. But I'm not using any gouges on this, specifically so that you guys could mainly just see me make this entire carving with nothing more than X-Acto knife, to show that you guys can do the exact same thing with minimal equipment and just make it cool. So as I continually clean this out, you guys will start to see the boxy edges are getting tough to work around. So the next step is going to have to be doing something about that. You guys can start to see a little bit of air light through, see a little bit of light getting through that, and that is one of the most exciting things. The first time you ever do a spiral and you start to see light through it, you start to believe that you have a shot of this actually happening without you snapping this thing in half. And it sounds like it wouldn't be a big deal, but trust me, it actually, you get pretty excited. Like I just mentioned, it gets kind of tough with those boxy kind of rings around there to get inside to continue to remove that core. So personally at this stage, what I start doing is just start cleaning up those outside edges and kind of rounding them off so I can reach a little bit deeper with the edge of my blade. This has got to be very intricate and slow, take your time type of carving. Obviously, I sped up some of these so that you guys could not have to painfully sit through it. But as you guys can see, it just is very, very small amounts of wood at a time. So now that it's a little bit more round, I can kind of fit in there a little bit better. I just keep working the inside angle. As you guys can see, carving the inside angle of each one of those. I've carved the outside and rounded it off. Now it's time to carve the inside and round it off. And as you're doing that, you'll find that more and more chunks of that core will come loose, and you'll break them up and try to fit them through the very tiny rungs there in your spiral. I will also say at this stage in the carving, those rungs are starting to get super delicate, and the entire thing, you can actually kind of squeeze it like a spring and you will get a reaction. It will move. There is some pliability in the wood, but that also means that you're right there on the cusp of doing some dangerous things, and if you push a little hard or use too much pressure or let that knife get away from you, you're at a very high risk of snapping one of those rungs. And if that happens, guys, just throw some super glue on it and drive on. Eventually you'll get to the point where it won't happen nearly as often. It'll still happen. It happens. I'm sure Michelangelo broke some stuff off of some things when he was a master, right? Mistakes end up happening, but if you just continually removing the material and take your time, you'll be shocked at what you end up with. Once you do remove the entire core and you kind of smooth out those outside edges to a point that you want, then it's time for sandpaper and just kind of smoothing things out. I go over the outside and then I fold another piece in half to try to kind of get between those edges, and I do as best I can. On some bigger pieces you can get a lot of sandpaper in between, and sanding the inside is not fun, but it really does make for a nice finished product, as you can see. Now, the final decoration thing that I'm doing on this particular one is I'm going to try to make a line that runs all the way along the rungs. That does two things. Number one, it makes it kind of visually more stimulating and gives it kind of more motion when you kind of spin it. And then number two, I just think it makes the piece look more complete as a whole. So the problem is that it is very intricate carving. If you guys don't want to add this, don't add it. But as you can see, I just scored a line very gently, and then I'm removing tiny, tiny, tiny bits of material using both hands because I don't trust one hand. And as you can see, you just remove that middle line, and then it kind of adds a little bit extra texture to the spiral, and it makes it look even more brilliant than it did before. Again, very simple project that is not hard to do. However, since it's hollow like this, it really gives the impression that you are some sort of carving genius, and trust me, you don't need to be. The first time that you try this, if you take your time and you have patience, trust me, you can get through it and make it happen. Now, at this point, whatever you want to do with stain or however you want to finish it is going to be up to you. There are tons of different options there. But I just am really, really stoked. Hopefully you guys ended up with a piece that looks pretty nice. All right, so here we are, and hopefully at this point, each and every single one of you has some little type of spiral that you can either throw some stain on or some polyurethane or finish, or you can just leave it natural. You can burn it with fire. You can do whatever you'd like to put whatever type of finish on your little spiral that you would like. I've given these away as like Christmas ornaments or as little gifts. People do appreciate them because obviously these take some time. For some of you, maybe it only took maybe 2-3 hours. For others, maybe it took a week. I don't know. There's no right or wrong way, guys. It's just about taking your time because it's about moving meditation and just hopefully you enjoyed the process of it all. Now, if you guys did like this video, please let me know in the comment section down below because I would love to make other things. I end up making things, just little simple things like chain out of wood, like this used to be this. I make little ball and cage things that are basically like rattles where you hollow out the inside of it. Just little basic carving challenges that to me, like I said, are moving meditation, but at the end of it, I have something kind of cool to show for it or a neat little gift to give to somebody. So let me know in the comment section down below if you guys would like to see more of this or if you guys think it's dumb. Either way, just tell me the truth. I'm a big boy, I can handle it. I do thank you guys so much for all the support and everything you guys are doing. I will catch you later in the week. Until I do go out to something amazing in your lives, keep working hard, people. Be nice to each other. Please. I'll see you then.